him through, we have a separate group called AMCAN, Andhra Medical College of North American Association. So Andulo, he has been instrumental in conducting Zoom calls almost every day for a long time. And then currently it is once weekly regarding COVID, since the beginning of COVID. Dr. Sudhakar Garu, along with many other eminent people like Dr. Chilimuri, Dr. Kairam, all came together, and I was part of that meeting, those meetings, and they were very beneficial. So thank you, sir, for doing that, and thanks for joining us today. And talking with you the other day brought all my memories back from Andhra Medical College. When I did the medical college there, we spoke about Narayan Rao Garu and other professors. That's great. And Dr. Srihari Garu, always smiling whenever I see him. Such a nice gentleman. And he is one of the key people in IMA, Indian Medical Association. And we are honored to have you, sir, again today to join us. And also say hello to our IMA president, Dr. Jailal, who is probably sitting right next to you right now. Hello to him. And then Captain Krishna Garu, I actually met him through one of the Zoom calls where I was doing some Zoom calls for COVID related issues with patients. And then he was asking a lot of questions. He was concerned about the society. And then, we were able to interact, and I realized that this person is a very good person and has social awareness. And that is how we continued our conversation. And I invited him to join this from the patient side. So, and Gandhi Jayanti Subhakangshalu. Gandhi garu mana patients andarni test chesaru ivala. I think mana non-violent gane then solve cheskunnam. So, first of all, I want to get to the core problem. Yenante, we have seen some violence, actually a lot of violence over the past year since the beginning of COVID, even though the patients are grateful for doctor services, hospital services. At the same time, there is another sect of the population who was very unhappy, either about the outcomes or why the financial charges are so high. And I have also seen that the trust between the public and the medical community has significantly been breached over the past 2 decades, I believe. It is quite different from when I was in India in medical college and what I used to see in my professors, what I used to see in other doctors. Now it is quite different. The dynamics have changed. Keeping all these things in mind, the focus for this specific session is how to build back the trust that is lost between the public and the medical community. And also, can we understand why the financial charges have gone up so much, and how can actually we bring it down? These are the 2 main issues. So with that, anyone can get started, whether it's Dr. Sudhakar or Srihari Rao Garu, with their answers for what I just said.
Yeah, thank you very much, Kiran, for having us here on the show. And hello, Srihari, and also Captain Krishna and Lavanya. And it's a wonderful event that you have been conducting for the last many weeks, I came to know. And I had the privilege of watching one of the videos as well. And am I audible, Kiran? Am
Yes,
I clear?
Yes, you're very much audible.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. The crux of the problem is lack of trust.
Yeah.
So, as you know, that the only constant thing in this world is the change.
Right.
Change has taken place right from in various areas, not only in the medical field, but also in judiciary, in police, in politics, and various other walks of life. However, when it comes to doctors, there are certain expectations of the patients and patients' relatives. They take the change happening in the other fields and they extrapolate those changes onto the doctor and the doctor-patient relationship as well as the treatment policies.
Right.
So it is the unrealistic expectations of the patients which is causing the problem, number one.
Yeah.
Number two, it is the lack of communication. This is the era of communications. So in the olden times, people never used to ask a question. No doctor was asked a question. But over a period of time, with the explosion of the information that is available to the public, with the explosion of the information in the internet, the expectations of the people have gone up. That is number one.
Right.
The second one is, similarly, the life of the doctor has become very fast. So people are not ready to cater those many hours or those many, they cannot really cater to the needs of the patient in terms of communication. They'll not be able to communicate. That's the reason, main reason between what we see in India as well as in other countries. Communication is given a lot of importance in America. Here also, though we teach our students and we tell our younger colleagues that the communication is very important, it takes some time for people to realize that how important communication is. This problem has to be solved, but I'm sure that it cannot be solved forever. For the simple reason, people will be unhappy despite whatever you do. But our aim should be to minimize the unrest, to minimize people attacking the doctors, to bring back the trust between the doctors and the patients, as well as the patient's attendants. So this is the ultimate aim. So a lot of steps have been taken in the past as well. Like, for example, the Act 11 of 2008 that was brought in by Y.S. Rajshekar Reddy. He said that this act was passed in 2008, and this is, if somebody causes damage or abuses a doctor, it is a cognizable offense, and the individual will immediately be arrested and appropriate action will be taken. And all the damage that is caused to the hospital because of the vandalism will always be recovered from the individual who has done it. So this has been there. But like any other problem in our society, we have a lot of rules and regulations, a lot of acts. But when it comes to the implementation, it is very difficult to implement. Number one, the implementing authority will not have so much of seriousness as the sufferers, because the doctors are the sufferers here. But the people who are supposed to implement these are the police. Automatically, the police will be on the side of the patients or the patient's attendants. So automatically, this particular act, which has come into existence more than 12 years or 13 years, is still not known to many people. Not only the doctors, but even the police do not know that such an act ever exists. So there is a lot of, there is a requirement of educating people, the police, the judiciary, the doctors, as well as the patient community with regards to this particular act. Because this is a deterrent. This is a deterrent to such eventualities. Like, for example, you have when you compare yourself with the judiciary, let us say. So judiciary, as you know, has got extraordinary powers under the Constitution. We all agree and abide by them. There is a simple contempt clause there. With that contempt clause, people are kept at bay most of the times, and they are not, people cannot go against the judiciary because it has become so popular. It is utilized so widely. That's the reason why people, this judiciary is basically protected. Similarly, for doctors to be protected, basically the law has to be understood by everybody. Simultaneously, the communication skills are to be improved, and also the doctors have to understand that it is 50% of the problem can be solved by properly communicating with the patient and telling everything right in advance rather than taking the recourse of trying to explain them after the adverse event takes place. So that is one very, very important aspect that one has to understand. And of course, despite doing all this, there are many people who are likely to commit the unrest, and these are the people who has to be taken care by the law. So this is preliminarily what I feel, and I'll come back with more as the discussion goes on. I'll come back with more and more of ideas. With regards to the charges that you are mentioning, that these charges are high these days, but when you compare the rest of the world, the charges are still lower in India compared to the other countries. The charges or the medical expenses, the higher medical expenses is highly relative term because you have the plastic surgery being done in the government medical colleges to the corporate hospitals. You have the same services available free of cost, at a moderate cost, and at a higher cost if from the individual's perspective. However, one has to understand where to go, which is the particular hospital which he can afford. So even if one goes to the topmost hospital, the expenses are far less compared to the other professions. For example, recently there was a bill. There was the lawyers were paid by the state government for appearing for 20 times in a court of law to one particular lawyer that has come to some 80 lakhs and odd. That means every appearance of a doctor, of a lawyer, he would get 4 lakhs out of it. That has been paid by the government. Can you ever imagine a doctor charging, even if I operate for 10 hours continuously standing, doing a beautiful microvascular reconstructive surgery, can you ever imagine me earning 4 lakhs a day? Which is impossible. So this comparison, though some people feel is not fair, that happens because we are all in the society and we are equals to the highest paid lawyers. But that can never happen with the doctor. So the charges or the expenses is a highly relative term. And people who cannot afford try to go to a corporate hospital, and later they feel sad for being charged there. And they have an avenue of government hospital which they never utilize. This is a very unfortunate aspect. So as far as the charges or expenses in the hospitals are concerned, I have no inhibition to say that it is not fair. It is reasonably fair in all our circumstances, and it is the consumer or it is the patient or the patient's attendants who has to take the call and go to the appropriate place.
Excellent, sir. I think there are a lot of good points that you made. Number one, the cost comparison and comparison to other professions. These are all great points. And it's interesting because that's true. Last time also, one of the participants asked this question. If medical industry is classified not under service industry, but under business, then why can't you charge whatever you want, essentially? Like, for example, if a lawyer charges what they want, if a movie actor takes, crores of rupees, then how is a doctor or a healthcare professional different from it? Why is there this mistreatment? Of course, at the same time, we also understand the affordability of a common man, because for example, a movie actor, he is getting paid by some producer who brings in a lot of money, either through financing or through his own money. And a very clear marketing is done to promote the movie, to make the money. Even after that, they face so many losses. That is a different issue. But in this situation, as a doctor and in the healthcare industry, it is the common man for most part who has to pay us. And is that the reason why there is so much struggle? That is one question that I have. And I also want to ask Dr. Srihari Garu to comment on what Dr. Sudhakar said.
Sir, good evening, everybody, sir. At the outset, Kiran Garu, you are conducting the 7th webinar on the Save the Saviors. Today, Dr. Sudhakar sir and Captain Krishna Garu is there. And regarding this expenditure and the payment of the patients, because patients are expecting free from the service from the hospital. They are thinking that the hospitals are there for the sake of the service for the people. But we are paying the commercial tax, commercial current, where we are paying the 16 other taxes also. So it is not possible, because last time Guru sir told, one day one patient admitted in hospital and without treatment he will leave next day, he discharged next day, it cost 1.5 lakhs. So it is a very cost effective. Nowadays, earlier olden days, last time I told, it is a simple stethoscope and table and one pen it is required for the doctor. But now it is technically developed. You need all the investigations and equipments and in one room, under one roof. And for that we have to pay, where all the equipments are imported. We are importing everything. We are paying the taxes for that. But that's why it is not patients are thinking that the charges are heavy. But as compared with the previous days, at that time, without diagnosis, they treat the patient longer time. They have to admit in long time and taken treatment. These are all the cost effective. But nowadays, within one short of time, they will diagnose the disease and the spotter, you can give the treatment. So it is the price, but technical, they are thinking that the doctors are charging, but this is not for the doctors. They are charging for the technique only. And high charges in hospital, government are paying very less, because they are telling that as earlier we discussed about COVID. COVID government is paying normal patients 4,000 rupees per day, and in case of any requirement in the separate oxygen and all, they are charging 6,000. ICU they are paying 10,000. Because of that, it is not maintainable by the hospitals. That's why they will charge more. Because government, if you ask for the charges for the hospitals and fix up the rates, they are not discussing with the Indian Medical Association, Nursing Homes Association, working for the doctors and the public. But they are not asking them, they are not involving the associations. That's why they are keeping their mind and they are fixing the charges. That is the problem. Patients are thinking that the hospitals are charging, but that is not the right. That is actually they are fixing the price is less. That's why actual price of the at the time of charging, they are thinking that the charges is high, and actually because of that they are attacking the doctors and destroying the property. As just now, Dr. Sudhakar sir told, 11 of 2008 is there, but there is no action taken anyone. And also, actually, so anti-social elements, they are doing any nonsense, because they are waiting for any problem comes in any hospital, they are come forward without the patients or attendants. And also, also they are not working. They are not properly safeguarding the hospitals. They are thinking that you can discuss with the patient and complete the process in short time. You can settle the issue. Actually, their duty is to protect the doctors and healthcare, but they are not doing their duty. And also asking to settle. And also legal people also come forward and issuing the legal notices and filing the criminal case against the doctors without any problem or any charges of the doctors. And also, and the media want the sensational news. They want sensational news, but they don't want the doctor's version. They are publishing any negative reports immediately. That's why, and whenever camera and TV channels come out to the hospital, the agitation is more, the distraction is more. That is the problem. And also government also, they're almost all fixing the everything for the private hospitals, but they are not having the facilities and all in the government sector. First, they have to implement the anything in the government sector, then only they are asking for the private sector. Because nowadays fire is many problems. It requires for the crores of rupees to fix up the fire in a hospital, but there is no fire equipments in the government hospital. Before fixing anything, government not discussing, as I told earlier, they're not discussing without the associations or any officials or any doctors are concerned. That is the problem, the main problem. Bureau's rights also not involving their if they anything related to the any subject to the doctors or anything, they have to involve all the doctors and they have to form the expert committee and all. That is not the things are happening. And also another CPA, Consumer Protection Act, also insisting the investigations for the patients. So you have to, earlier headache, you can treat with the tablet, but nowadays it's not possible the doctors to diagnose, treat the patient before, because you have to diagnose the cause, then only you can prescribe the treatment. These are the problems are there, but we are facing a lot of problems. But even though doctors the attacks are going, but for that sake, our doctors has to know their things, because the trust is required for the hospitals. But we are lacking that trust because people, media, and government also lack the trust on the doctors and all. Because there's some problems is there. The doctors also taking the treatment. During treatment, you have to concentrate on the patients and communicate properly and take care of the patient and attention required for the patient. If you have any emergency or you don't have time, you tell the patient and do examine after some time. That may be acceptable. But and also defensive practice, mainly defensive practice in case of any emergency, they are referring the cases to the longer and higher centers. And that is during the travel time also patients are dead. That may cause the attacks on the hospitals. And some hospitals are not accepting checks or any insurance policies. And some hospitals are not admitting the patients if they have the insurance or the RX3. Sometimes they refuse the admission. That may be sometimes they are the causes for the attacks. And also investigation. There are limitations you have to explain the patient. The expectation and limitations is there. If you advise for the ventilator and ECMO, you have to inform the patients about what the cost and what is the final outcome of the patient. These are the things are there. So mainly transparency, they are lacking the transparency, and where package also, you have to fix up package according to patients cannot for the management. So proper communication, as I told, proper communication is required. And generally, the generation people wants the money, quick money. They want that is the problem. And the language you have to use. All the people are speaking in Telugu, but they were not communicating the patient properly. Once the patients, you have to communicate the clinician only. They are not the other person, third person sometimes the clinician is treating, but with the patient, they are communicating the other person. The third person is communicating the patient. That is not sufficient. And also in manufacturing, now our units also, we were competitively less in manufacturing units, prosthesis and our surgeries and all, it is defect. So these are the problems now facing our medical fraternity, and these are the causes for the attacks on doctors. Now, for that, you have to take public and partnership required. Private and public partnership is required for the maintain the hospitals, and you have to treat the patients in a good manner.
Yep.
That is the thing. Kiran?
Yes, sir.
And,
Sir, you made a lot of good points. And one of the things that there are two things that really are very clear in what you're saying. One is, it's not so much that the doctors or hospitals are charging too much. It is not that they are charging too much. It is essentially the affordability is low as a public in general. That is one common theme that I have been hearing, because it's not like we are charging, way too much than what it is supposed to be. That is what I'm hearing from you. It simply is not affordable, because as a person, most people are making, let's say, 20,000 or 30,000 per month, or even less than it. Then they can't afford 1.5 to 2 lakhs per day in a corporate hospital. At the same time, you also made another point that in the government sector, is the government helping the government hospitals to set up proper infrastructure and keep up with the latest advancements that are needed. When that happens, then public will have more trust in the government hospital. That is what I am hearing from you. So they can go there instead of private hospitals. Now, we'll come back to that one. I'll ask actually that question to Dr. Sudhakar Garu, because he's the principal of Andhra Medical College and closely associated with King George Hospital. But before that, I want to hear Captain Krishna Garu comments, and based on what you heard so far from Dr. Sudhakar and Dr. Srihari Garu.
Yeah, first of all, good evening, Dr. Sudhakar Garu and Dr. Srihari Garu. And a very good morning to Dr. Kiran, and for conducting this series of webinars on Save Our Saviors. I think both of them have covered most of the points which I had, leaving me very little scope for any discussion. But notwithstanding that, so I have discussed when this particular thing has been told with few of my friends and other people, basically to give a perspective from the patients and the patient's family point of view. There's absolutely, and I say it again very strongly and emphasize, there is absolutely the doctors are held in very high esteem in this country without any doubt. And one more thing what I want to bring out is an assault on a doctor, an isolated incident, cannot be attributed to the whole community of doctors or the entire profession. It's an isolated case, and I request that isolated case be thoroughly studied and find out the reasons for any violence that has taken place. Having said that, one is, it is easy for a person from outside to talk about these things because a doctor during his course of a day attends to a number of cases in a day. So for him, each one he attributes to is a case. Whereas the person who comes there as a patient, he is a head of a family, he is a mother, or she is a mother, or she's a brother, father, son, daughter-in-law, and other relatives, and who are very well placed or looked after in their family. So they come to the hospital only when all the chips are down and pinning their hopes on a hospital. Okay, so it is basically more than any other thing. It's an emotional issue when they come to the hospital and give the care of that particular patient in the hands of the hospital and the doctor. So now, having said this, now let us see the case by, the steps that happen once a person is admitted in a hospital. Let us take an ICU case. A patient, because of an issue, he comes to the hospital as an emergency and ICU case. The point starts at this particular point of time. How long is he made to wait? And the precious time that is lost while admitting him. I am not blaming the doctors. What I am trying to say is how best this time, the loss of time, can be minimized so that the patient gets a better treatment and his life can be saved. Here, when we are talking about the doctors, we are talking about the life of an individual is at stake. If a car is gone, if a car gets defective, you can replace a car. Okay, you spend 5 lakhs, 10 lakhs, 20 lakhs, 30 lakhs. But if a life is lost, it cannot be replaced. It cannot come back. So that is a place, that is a time, and that is probably an occasion where the sensitiveness within the doctor and the hospital is required to be there while looking after the patients. That's one. And after being admitted, the second thing is when, how, and fast is being taken into an ICU, and what treatment has been started, the initial normalization or stabilization process, how fast has it been started? Thereafter, how much time has it elapsed before a specialist doctor has come to see him? And the tests which are required to be undertaken, the prescription of tests and the prescription of medicines. So these are the other points which come into the things. Next is, as has already been brought out in by one of the panelists here, the main critical issue is apprising the patient or the family about the seriousness of the case, where in very lucid terms, depending upon the patient and the family, they are required to be explained how serious is the case. Once that is explained, if an incident happens, probably they can understand it. If that is not, but the thing has not been explained to them properly, that gives rise to sudden burst of emotions, and which results in vandalism or the attacks on the hospital or the doctor. And other thing is when a patient comes to a hospital, during the first critical period, if he's properly informed about what the problem is, the patient also can have a chance for a second opinion is required to be given to him. These days, during the days of internet, people go there and then start looking after the internet, which is not wrong and which should not be taken in a wrong sense. Because by doing this, he is taking some information, but definitely he is not capable or he is not as knowledgeable as a doctor. A doctor has done a course of about 5 years to 7 years and more than that. But this, at least the internet gives him a chance to understand what are the terms that are being used by the doctors and what is the criticalness of the illness and what are the other alternatives that are available to him. Okay, now coming to this wait time, because wait time when a person is brought to the hospital, that's the time the patient, so family, relatives, friends who are there, they are totally charged up with emotions. So that's the time probably a very well-placed person in the hospital is required to be employed to soothe their emotions, because it is totally a play of emotions here, nothing else. So that is one. Next is, as I've told you, admission in the hospital ICU. Probably because after a patient has been admitted, some hospitals do allow one patient or one relative or friends to visit him in the ICU, which can be avoided because of the sanitization requirements. Because people do not want to come into a ICU because of the sanitation issues. So it is nowadays, using the technology, it is definitely a cost-effective thing to provide a webcam at each of the bed, so that the link can be given to the patient's family once he's admitted in an ICU, so that
Yeah.
they can at least look after the patient, how he is, and whether he's being looked after well or not. That is probably one of the very good confidence building measures.
Right.
Okay. As far as a patient who is admitted in the ICU is concerned. Next is we're talking about tests, because it has become a standard practice. The moment a patient goes, a list of tests, whether required or not required. I am not competent to judge which is required, which is not required.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the series of tests are given to him, whether all of them are really required or not. So probably a rationalization of tests which are actually required for that particular disease are required to be given.
Right.
Okay, so that is one. And here in this particular case, the medicines which are prescribed are the families, they go to the concerned pharmacy which is attached to the hospital, buy them and come them back. This is very small issue, but this is a great confidence building measure, because people see that the medicines which have been bought by them are, if they're not used, they go back to the pharmacy. Okay. So if that particular thing has been, if that can be ensured that whatever you are bringing, they are being utilized properly, it's a very small issue, but gives a great boost and a great confidence to the family that yes, everything is all right in this particular hospital. I need not worry about anything. That's one. Next is about the case history. Case history needs to be made transparent. The medical case history, which is kept on each of the bed, that needs to be transparent. It should need to be available, and the family members, if they want it, I think there should not be any hesitation in probably sharing the case history sheet, so that it helps them in taking a proper second opinion if it's required.
Yeah. So
that is the one. And other thing, what has been told as by one of the panelists is Acha Pandit.
Let's hold on to this one for 1 second so that we can get some of the answers to the questions, and then we can get back to the questions again, so that we can address one. I will ask Dr. Sudhakar to shed light on some of the things Captain Krishna has touched.
Sure, Kiran. And thank you, Captain Krishna, for bringing out so many important issues which are in the minds of the common people who come to the hospitals. The first thing is, he spoke about the time lag between the admission and the patient's arrival. We have to understand that India has 140 crores of population. And if you look at the doctor population ratio, it's not that much. When somebody is not admitted on time, the patients also should understand what the doctor was doing inside. And I have a lot of experiences wherein the patient is interested in only himself. He is not interested in the neighbor. However serious or sick the neighbor is, and the doctor is attending on him. It is a very common scene for us in the emergencies, where the person with abrasions, simple abrasions, will be making a lot of creating a lot of problems there, rather than a patient who is unconscious. And the doctor naturally goes to the unconscious patient and tries to revive him. And because this is very innocuous, and to make that gentleman understand that what his problem is not so severe or serious, is not possible for the paucity of time. Because the number of patients that you see in India is far more than what you see in the other places. It's very nice to talk about counseling the patient, talking to them repeatedly, spending a lot of time. When you are seeing 10 patients a day in America, you'll be seeing 100 patients in India. But the doctor in India and the doctor in America will have the same 24 hours a day, unfortunately. So that's where the doctors are in India are in a disadvantageous position because of the population. You cannot reduce the 140 crore population to 40 crore population overnight, nor it would never happen. On the other hand, you have to increase the doctors. That also would not happen overnight. But the expectations do take place overnight, unfortunately. So at this moment of time, when the people's expectations are very high, like through the internet, through the Googling he was telling me. So it takes away a lot of our time, because if I have to answer a person who comes with a background knowledge from the Google University, I would require a lot more time than I tell a patient without that, because he does not stop. He doesn't know where to stop asking questions. He keeps on asking questions. Sometimes he even show you some of the good results that have been published in the internet. He would not talk about the worst results. He will not talk about the complications. The third one is, he would always, being a plastic surgeon, I have the experience of people asking me to make somebody like a film star. They'll come out with a magazine. If you can assure them that you will be making, you're a good doctor. Otherwise, you're a bad doctor. As simple as that. So with experience of over 30 years in the medical field, I always feel sad sometimes that why am I working?
Yeah.
Though we try to do our best. And the time lag is not entirely dependent on the doctor most of the times. If somebody is sitting quiet and not doing anything and not admitting the patient, has to be penalized. That is quite understandable. But 90% of the times, it is the lack of time. Time
1 minute.
is the, yeah.
Doc, 1 minute. If I can interrupt you for a minute here. Yeah. What you said is absolutely right. Here we are looking at the doctor per se and the hospital administration per se. These are the two aspects which come into picture or which come into the role for this particular issue. So either the doctor or the hospital, administration needs to look into this particular aspect. As I 100% agree with you, if you look into the patient and the doctor ratio in India, it is,
it is, to just give the number, 1 in 250 in Western countries like America, England, is around that, somewhere around 1 in 200, 1 in 250, around that range. In India, it is 1 in 2000, 1 in 2500, around that range. So you can see the vast difference. But
Like Captain Krishna has said just now, the hospital administration and the doctors, they are to be separate. So the more you employ people, the more you have in the hospital, the more would be the cost for the patient. Again, we are talking cost cutting. So one of the cost cutting measures is the doctor acts both as a doctor as well as an administrator. That's a cost cutting measure again. So if you have to have the administrator altogether separate, that basically means that you have to put all those on the patient himself. In a country which spends 0.8% of the GDP on the public health, and in a country where the expectations are skyrocketing on par with the Western world, how can we match these two? We are in the lowest 4 countries of spending as far as the health is concerned. But when you take the expectations of the patient, probably will be in the top 10 in the world. So how can we match these two? That is something which we cannot even imagine. So we'll have to understand that the pricing is in accordance with the services that are available. And in a medical OP in King George Hospital, a doctor looks after 100 patients, which is in about 3 or 4 hours, which is a crime if it is done outside this particular country. But they're hard pressed. If you take only 10 patients and send 90 patients away, turn them back, would it serve the purpose of the community? It will not. So the doctors are working under great pressure. That has to be understood. That's why, philosophically, most of the times I tell people that the main problem with the healthcare scenario in India is everybody knows what the doctor is supposed to do, but nobody knows what they are supposed to do. To put it in a nutshell, everyone has an understanding what a doctor is supposed to do, If you ask them to write about the doctor, what are the responsibilities of the doctors, they can write pages together. The moment you give them and ask them what are your responsibilities, nobody cares. They do not understand.
Yeah.
So that is the crux of the problem. That is the crux of the problem, I always feel. And at the same time, in the same voice, I wish to say that just because people do not know what they are supposed to do, we cannot leave it at that point. We should always try to improve the situation at every point. You may say that, just because people are not responsible enough, are we going to leave them like that? No. Still, there is a scope for improvement. We all should strive for the improvement of the system, and we should always, but can never be compared to the Western world.
Yeah, I totally agree with what you're saying. Because of the ratio of patients, the population, and the doctors, the very purpose of this particular seminar is to identify these particular problems and if any corrective measures can be taken or not. If we cannot take any corrective measures, if that is a foregone conclusion, then I think we are losing the very purpose of having a webinar. Right?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's why in my towards the end I said that we always should try to bring this gap down, always. Narrow this gap. And at the same time, there are two things that I have told you. One is the population, or the mismatch of the doctors and population. The second one is the expenditure that we put forward. We have no money to put forward towards our, how many people in our country have the insurance? People are not ready to pay 10 rupees from their pocket towards the insurance. But when the time comes, they want to be treated free of cost. 20 years ago, when I visited USA, the first thing that I have realized there, the basic difference was the insurance. Those people have insurance. Most of them have insurance. And here, most of them do not have insurance. That is all the difference that they have, that is made. To make people aware that they have to have the health insurance, they have to take care of their own health, and they have to take care of the society as well. Like I have told you earlier, people are interested only in themselves. They are not interested in the neighbor. They should have a bigger heart to look at their neighbors also. When it comes to an emergency, they should feel that the person who requires attention first should always be allowed, which never happens. Even if they come to my outpatient department, my roll call or the way I see the patients, nobody would wish to follow the queue. Nobody wish to follow give respect to my time. So they want to be treated. Everyone wants to be number one. Everyone wants to be first. They are not bothered about the candidate who is standing behind them.
Absolutely. Having understood the Indian environment, what we are trying to look at this particular point of time is how best we can make the existing resources useful and meet the requirements. We know the Indian environment. There's absolutely no doubt about it.
So for that, the first thing is understanding. We have to spread this word of understanding. Please do understand that this is our situation here in India. Please do not have the expectations which are beyond the ability of a particular doctor or the medical fraternity in general. Number two, have the same system and the faith that you had about 50 years ago on the doctors. Okay? And these are the challenges that we have. Educating is what is required.
In fact, in one of the seminars we spoke that what's happening is now with the growing of corporate hospitals, even for a small issue, a person is going to a corporate hospital. There is no concept of a primary clinic or what we call a local clinic. Supposing since you are in Visakhapatnam, if I'm talking in Sitamdara, MVP colony, 2-3 private clinics should be available here, where a person should go there into that particular place. And after that, only when they refer, then they should be going to a hospital with a higher facilities. Okay, that is one. Next is
I comment here one second. And Srihari Rao Garu, if you're still there, I know that you're in the middle of a meeting, another thing too. But if you're still there, you're welcome to comment, sir. I know you're muted. So, sir, I have a question, Dr. Sudhakar Garu. Yes, whatever that is said is true. There is no doubt about it. It's not, I can also tell you from my experience talking to different people and being in practice for a while now, most doctors mean well. Most doctors, I can tell you, most of them, and work very hard, try to make things happen, but the system has to enable proper care also. It is just not, I'm not Chiranjeevi or Pawan Kalyan or Balakrishna, whatever you want, that can change things overnight like a hero. Unfortunately, that is the situation. We are all normal, common people, even the doctors, except that we have extra knowledge about medical care, what to do. But the limitations are the same for all of us. The primary reason why I'm actually conducting these webinars is, I think, education. For more people understand what are the limitations and what can be done to overcome limitations. I don't think it is a doctor problem only. You know, I don't think this is just a health community problem. I think this is a public health crisis. This is a public problem. The entire thing, like everyone should come together, the media, the public, the government, of course, the doctors community, the hospitals, administrators, everyone has a role to play in this one. Only then I believe we can improve the system. Sir, I have one question for you, Dr. Sudhakar. King George Hospital, being a government hospital, and like Dr. Srihari Rao Garu said, you know, there is a gap between the government hospitals and private hospitals because of the infrastructure that is available. So can you comment on that, sir, for a second? Because an average person, they want to, like a lot of times I heard from other doctors saying that, why don't you go into a government hospital? Their perception is government hospitals are not so government
Srihari, please mute yourself, Srihari. Srihari, please mute yourself. Please mute yourself. Yeah, unless you want to say something.
Kiran,
Yeah.
sir.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah.
Kiran, sir.
Sir.
Our national president is there.
Yeah, we would like to say hello to him.
1 second, I will give.
Yeah.
This is Kiran from ES. Last time we attended. Hello.
Hello, Dr. Jaila. How are you?
Yeah, we are meeting here in Visakhapatnam. So just
Right.
thank you. Nice.
Dr. Srihari.
Our national secretary.
There. Good to see you.
Yeah.
Hello,
Dr. Jaila.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello,
All
sir.
the best.
Good. Thank you.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thanks
Yeah.
so much.
Okay, sir. Kiran.
Yeah.
I am
Yeah.
leaving, sir. Please carry on, sir.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Thank you
Sudhakar,
for your
sir.
participation. Yeah.
Okay.
So, sir.
Yeah.
Dr.
I got it. Kiran, you asked me.
Yeah.
You asked me about the facilities in the government hospital versus private hospitals.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. Again, here, let us say, if you are provided 100 rupees to a government hospital, you are expected to see 100 patients. In a corporate hospital, you spend 100 rupees and you see 10 patients. That means you are distributing 10 rupees to each patient.
Yeah.
That is, as to put it very simply. Okay. Here, the requirements in the government hospital are higher because of the higher patient turnover. But the budgetary allocation is limited for the reason that the government do not have enough money. I do not want to blame the government because government will have its own priorities. Priorities in terms of education, health, other agriculture, so on and so forth. And of course, the welfare schemes. So if you put the budget, government budget that is given to the private hospitals and compare that with a corporate hospital, looking at the number of beds that they have, you know that the King George Hospital has about 1,500 beds now officially, but unofficially you have some 2,200 patients every day. So the bed occupancy is more than 100% always. It is like having 5 or 6 corporate hospitals.
Right.
But do you have the budget of the 6 corporate hospitals to King George Hospital? No. That's why you will be working under a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
Starting from suture material to the antibiotics.
Right.
You have certain limitations.
Right.
So this is primarily because all those who go to the corporate hospitals, they do not pay from the pocket. Like I have told you earlier, many of them will have insurance, either personal insurance or they will have the insurance from their respective companies. Most of them, maybe around 80% of them will be, the third party will be paying. The out-of-pocket expenditure is not that much. So they all can afford. About 20% of them will definitely have to pay from the pocket, those who can afford.
Yeah.
So the budgetary constraints in the government hospitals always make them less equipped.
Yeah.
Number 2, the ambience. The people who come to the government hospitals will have a lot more people attending on them, in the sense, the relatives.
Yeah.
Here, there is no order for you because their lifestyle is like that. If one person gets admitted, you'll have at least 6 or 7 person visiting them. So every day in King George Hospital, you have 15,000 to 16,000 people attending on the patient's attendance, attending on the patient as patient's attendants.
Yeah.
What does it do? It ultimately makes the hospital less hygienic.
Yeah.
And in fact, it requires more budget than the corporate hospital. In a corporate hospital, if you have 100 patients in that, maybe you'll have another 100, maybe 200 attendants a day, not more than that, because the rules are very stringent there. People who go there will listen to the hospital administration that they're not supposed to visit the patient. And here the system is not like that.
Yeah.
So the challenges are much more in government hospitals, and the budgetary requirements are much more than in the corporate hospitals, which are not met with. So this is the main reason for the government hospitals not being able to perform to the expectations of the public, particularly in terms of the hygiene and sanitation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Though the expertise is skyrocketing. If you look at King George Hospital, the persons here, the doctors particularly the heads of the departments and professors, they are of the top quality.
Yeah.
And you will not find so experienced doctor outside in a corporate hospital, but still people prefer corporate hospital because of the ambience.
Yeah.
Because of the ease of getting the care there.
Right. Right.
So that's how it happens.
Yeah. Yeah. No, all these are very valid points. And again, I am not under the illusion that we are going to solve all the problems in a day or in a week or even in a year. But these are all good discussions. That is what I want to happen. I want more and more of this discussion happen. Krishna Garu, please go ahead. Please.
Yeah. So as I've been, so the only thing which a patient's family requires from the hospital is, I'm saying again and again, the patient's well-being and timely reports to the family, to anyone concerned. So what happens is, once it has been admitted, I understand all the all the restrictions are there.
Yeah.
But if you don't get to know what's the problem, what's being done to them, there's obviously that much of restlessness will be cropping up in the family members.
Yes.
So, and I've seen cases where the doctors are very good, but the communication has become poor. So I do not know what's happening. And we try to circumvent, because at my stage level, we could turn around these particular issues. So a doctor used to send an SMS on a regular basis. So
Yeah.
our patient, this is the problem, this is the problem, this is what we are doing it. Fine, that actually brings you tension down. The family is good. And
Yeah.
okay, now they are looking after the patient. So there's no need for us to worry. That sort of a thing is there.
Yeah.
Having said that now I've one more thing is rationalization of treatment.
One second. Krishna Garu, you are bringing
Yeah.
good points. I want to answer about the communication aspect, something, because that is an important topic. Everything that you're bringing is important. So I just want to make sure that everything is answered, not only for us, but everyone else watching outside the panel. And also, this is going to be transmitted through various social media and YouTube channels. I want people to get answers. Communication is the key. Without any doubt, I think 80% of the problems in this world can be solved by proper communication, whether it is husband and wife, whether it is boss and employee, whether it is patient and doctor. But communication is a two-way street. It is a two-way street, always. And in a lot of relationships, what I notice is either this person is not saying anything or not saying things properly, or this person is not understanding, no matter how much this person is saying. The problem is on either side, often. Okay. Now, coming to the healthcare sector, what I notice is, and I can tell you honestly, even coming from now, America, where I am practicing now, even here, communication is a problem. There is a communication lapse between doctor and doctor. There is a communication lapse between doctor and patient. There is a communication lapse between the medical system and other different parts, like the nurse or the consultant, different things. So that is a core issue. That is a core issue even in America. Okay. In India, I believe the problem is compounded by the fact that the lack of time. But that should not always be the excuse, lack of time, in my opinion. Okay. A cognizant doctor, a conscientious doctor, even though he's trying his best, because of lack of time, all these things happen. But I think there are certain things that we as doctors in general, even here I'm talking about, not just in India, can learn to enhance the communication. That is a skill that needs to be developed. And unfortunately, that is a skill that is not taught in school, in college, in medical college, even after you get to work. This is something some doctors develop by their self-effort. How to do, like in 1 minute, they could communicate what they need to and somehow calm down the situation and then make people feel at ease. And I agree with you, that needs to be focused upon. And in my opinion, in India, in America, wherever it is, separate communication related classes to be held right from medical college. That is very important. Number two reason for lack of communication, even from very good doctors, a lot of times is, apart from time issue, they are stressed, they are under pressure. They want to say something, they care about the patient, they even think about sending you a text message, but they are distracted by something else, So the pressure under which they constantly, a lot of doctors, a lot of engineers, a lot of people in general, we are not taught how to handle pressure. We are not taught how to handle stress. So the another thing that I equally propose, whether it is medical college or corporate hospital, wherever it is stress management. How to be calm, because when your mind is calm, you could multitask and still not be making mistakes. When our mind is restless, we can't even focus on one thing properly. We get easily distracted and we miss things, we make mistakes. So these are the two comments that I have on this issue of communication, how to improve them.
Yeah, may I interrupt here? What you said is absolutely right. Very good professionals lack communication skills.
Yeah.
I mean, to a large extent, I mean, if we can talk in general, very good professions, they lack communication. So what is required is take the load of them. The load of communication needs to be taken away from them.
That is not possible.
How?
You would ask for another 50,000 rupees per day because even in America, I know we live in an ideal world. Krishna Garu, you, me, Sudhakar Garu, we all know what needs to be done. But practically when it comes to it, for example, even for myself, right, I'm busy doing things and I want someone else to communicate on my behalf to the patient, right? To some extent that may solve the problem, but not always. But I think that is to be considered. I understand.
As you said, out of 10 patients, probably where the doctor's direct interference may be required, may come down to 1 or 2 patients, may not be for all 10. At least for other not very critical or serious situations, probably an offloading of communication may help. Maybe this is a point for consideration.
Sudhakar Garu, you want to say something about it? That is an important point. Do you want to comment on that one?
Yeah. And definitely. Right in the beginning, in my opening remarks, I spoke to you about the communication. Communication is the key. Communication is very, very important. There are no two opinions about that. Here, I'll have to differ with Captain Krishna in one aspect. Every patient wants to be communicated in Indian scenario by the doctor himself. Now, if I say that you're okay, that's why I don't speak to you, would not basically satisfy him. If I have 10 patients, all my 10 patients expect me to talk to them. So that is an inherent quality of any patient. So there is nothing to feel sorry about that. But at the same time, the clever doctor will usually try to distribute the time in such a way that wherever it is necessary, he would spend a little more time. Wherever it is not necessary, but he takes care of every patient, communicating with every patient to the extent possible, to the extent needed. So communication is very, very important. I fully agree with you. Like you said, all the problems, 80% of the problems can be avoided by properly communicating. So at this juncture, I wish to tell you something. Now that the National Medical Commission has come out with a different teaching pattern, what is known as competency-based medical education. We are all teaching our students in this. This has come into work since 2019. And here, there is what is called AET-COM. That means Attitude, Ethics, and Communication. We take a class every week, starting from the first year MBBS, because this has been realized by the National Medical Commission, the erstwhile Medical Council of India also, and thought that we should have a specific time for teaching the students of the attitude, ethics, and communication, because these three are very, very important for individuals when they go into the practice. So every Saturday, we teach them about this. Not only teaching, it is not a didactic lecture. So we will give them a lot of exercises. Like, I'll give you one example. If an adverse event has to be broken, if a sad note needs to be broken out to the patient, how do you deal with that? So this is an exercise that is given to the individual. Initially, we teach. Later, we give an exercise. We give case scenarios that this is what has happened. How do you deal with the patient's attendance at this point of time? So this is an integral part of the medical education now.
That's good.
Fortunately. I think it takes a few more years for the fruits to be reaped. So this is something that is, I think, a welcome gesture. And let us see how it works out. But we've been trying right from this first year onwards for the medical students to teach this attitudes, ethics, and communications.
Actually, as you said, for a patient, the first thing is disease will just vanish if he sees a pleasant doctor in front of him. Half of his disease is gone. That is, I mean, that is, so other point which I want to bring out is rationalization of cost of treatment and gradation of hospitals. As we are talking about, one is I'm keeping aside the government hospitals, since most of the discussion is centered around the private hospitals. Because very little we can do about the government hospitals within the purview of what we have. So how can this cost be rationalized? And like what I see is the insurance companies, when a bill is forwarded to them, they carry out their auditing or checking, they do it. Obviously, they have a system of cost of the treatments, cost of various procedures. So now these procedures, whether we can grade them as per the hospitals. If it is a one single star hospital, this per cost should be this much. If it's a 2-star hospital, this per cost can be this much. If it's a 3-star hospital, cost can be this much. So what is changing here is not the treatment cost per se, but the facilities that are being extra provided by the graded hospitals. 1-star hospital may not be very good in the giving the facilities, may not be an attached bathroom, or may not be attached a nurse, or may not be something like that. Or a 2-star hospital can give something more, a 3-star hospital can give something more. If this rationalization of cost can be done, probably, I mean, it will be slightly more transparent that, yeah, for this particular range of hospitals, this is the charges I can expect. So that is one point.
Should we take comment from Dr. Sudhakar Garu about that?
Yeah, it's a very good idea. I think I welcome that. And it's being done in some of the hospitals, in fact. That's how the broad classification of NABH hospitals has come into work. All the NABH accredited hospitals they charge a little higher than the non-NABH accredited hospitals. That holds good as far as the physical facilities are concerned, but not the services. Because if a hospital, let us say a 2-star hospital, wishes to have a 5-star doctor, naturally they have to pay for the doctor who is more experienced. They have to pay more. So like he said, for the facilities, if it is a general ward, this much of amount. If it is a special ward, I think that's being done in most of the hospitals, even if they are there. And it has to be displayed. The most important aspect here is that they have to tell the patient in advance. The patients or attendants should never take their final bill by surprise. Right in the beginning, they should understand that this much would be the cost of this particular procedure.
Absolutely.
And that solves many problems.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because after a patient is admitted in the hospital, if it's an emergency case, within 1-2 days, the hospital should be able to tell him the approximate cost for the treatment. So then the patient can take a call whether to continue in that hospital or look for an alternative. That's one.
I like that very much. I just want to comment on that transparency and the communication part. Essentially, coming back to while the pipeline is being built, while a new road is being laid for a better healthcare structure across India. So what are the things that, whether it is the doctors or the health systems, what can they do from their side to reduce the chance for friction, to reduce the chance for violence? Or if you take that into consideration, 2 things. One, we already discussed communication. The second thing is, like Dr. Sudhakar said, right from the beginning, okay, this is what is going to cost you approximately for 1 day, 2 day, 3 day. And the ICU stays so much, or the ward, it is so much. I think if patients have some kind of idea right at the beginning, they may be able to say, you know what, maybe I don't want to be here. Maybe I want to go somewhere else. So it will give them at least the option. They can make a conscious decision and they understand, okay, it is okay. We'll end this session in the next 5 minutes or so, because I think it's already 1.5 hours. I'm sure Dr. Sudhakar has a next appointment. So Dr. Krishna Garu, last, we'll I'll again invite you to ask more questions. So for now, it's the last question.
In cases of incorrect diagnosis, incorrect treatment procedures followed, and incorrect prescription of medicines. So these things, not all doctors do it. We are talking about those erring ones or cases where the errors have taken place. It is nothing, it is not a generalized, but these cases do take place. And how do we correct them? What is the redressal and grievance system, which is a prompt system which is in place?
Yeah, I think, Kiran, this is a very pertinent question. And I think we have to have 1 hour session on this. I am ready to answer this, but I require at least 1 hour because I was in the AP Medical Council earlier, along with Srihari. I was an in-charge chairman also for that. And this is a very important, pertinent question that Captain Krishna has raised. And I think I wish that you should have 1 more session exclusively on this particular topic. If you allow me to make a final word, I'll make a final comment and leave.
Sure, sir. We'll definitely
Absolutely.
We'll conduct another session to actually have this discussed. But yes, let us take your final words and then we'll wrap up.
Like I have told you earlier, I have told you something like everybody knows what the doctor is supposed to do, and they do not know what they're supposed to do. That is one. I teach most of my students. Being a teacher, I teach most of my students only one thing. Just imagine yourself in the position of the patient or the patient's attendant.
That's all.
This is what I want to tell the doctors. And this for the public, please do understand. Imagine yourself in the position of the doctor and understand. So if both the parties can understand, I think most of the problems can be solved. That's all from my side.
That's true. If everyone can do that, understand simply, I would say not 80%, 80% with communication, but with understanding, 99% of problem will be gone, including terrorism. And that is the biggest challenge that we have. That's true.
I'll just close down with a small example. Like why I'm telling about this incorrect diagnosis is the patient who is not suffering from this is Parkinson's disease has been given to take a Syndopa or Syndopa plus medicine. And Syndopa is used for Parkinson's disease. Okay, that's number one. One is the patient doesn't have it because that has been ratified later by a third doctor. And he said after stopping that medicine, the patient has become all right. And to differentiate between Parkinson's and Parkinson's plus, I think the other disease, which I'm not very sure at this particular point of time, they asked to undergo FDG scan and brain PET scan, which costs whopping 35,000 rupees, one. And number two, it takes a patient at least 12 hours of sitting for that particular procedure to complete it. When a patient comes to a hospital,
Kiran, we can answer all these queries in the next session that you are planning.
Yes, absolutely.
How about we do that, huh? Thank you.
Definitely,
Sir.
I can answer all those questions. No problem.
He will be Captain Krishna Garu. I will again invite you, and I'll again invite Dr. Sudhakar Garu, and then we can have a non-rush discussion about other questions also. How about that, huh?
Okay. Right. Okay. Good night, Dr. Sudhakar Garu.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.
Thanks for a lot of good points made by you. I really appreciate your time and your expertise. And also, Captain Krishna Garu, thanks for joining us and asking some of the patient-related questions so that we as doctors have the ability to discuss them and clarify and build a better healthcare system. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kiran, for having us here. And thank you, Captain Krishna, and a very good night for all of you. And let us meet again next time.
Thanks, sir.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, right. Okay, bye.
Bye.